Awesome. Sounds good. I never want to like blow people's ears off, so yeah. Let's go through our brilliant panelists here, and the topic is Bitcoin and DeFi. So a lot of buzz with the Bitcoin hype this week, but obviously it's been around like more than 10 years in an extremely durable market and has been #1 coin for a while. And I think the question we want to get at in this panel, and we have a lot of different perspectives, is how to involve Bitcoin in DeFi and some of the challenges and opportunities. So let's go through some quick intros, starting with you, Charlie.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie. I lead the security and DevOps efforts for the ZetaChain team. I've been with ZetaChain for a couple of years now, and we had interaction with native Bitcoin, so really a core piece of what we're doing, so excited to chat more about it.
Hello, my name is Teo. I'm running a crypto VC based in Seoul, and we just met at ZetaChain team like 2 years ago, and really happy to just endeavor just like get to this like stage. So like I'm happy to just be here. Just yeah, great time.
Hey everybody, my name is Eric. I'm the head of partnership of DODO. DODO is a decentralized exchange based on our proactive market making algorithm, which is highly capital efficiency trading assets. Nice to meet you guys.
Cool, and thank you each of you for joining. So I think what would be helpful for the listeners, that this is an Omnichain day, cross-chain, multi-chain. Help us understand what these words mean, and why is multi-chain important? Maybe we'll start at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think definition about multi-chain is that a protocols going to actually function on different kind of ecosystem like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all these things. And we've seen that these different technologies based on different tech stacks have introduced some of the liquidity fragmentations. I think that's why Omnichain is very important to bring all these liquidity together.
Yeah, so I think like it's better to understand if I just put it this way. So I think like each mainnet or chain like is a country and nation, and like then there gotta be a kind of communication channel among them to like interact with each other. And for example, like in the financial perspective, like there like ZetaChain, the cross-chain solution like a ZetaChain can work as a like SWIFT system for dollar. So it's like so ZetaChain can be a SWIFT system for Bitcoin. So you can just make a transaction over the globe, like regardless of any chain or any country. So I think like ZetaChain like enables this kind of like cross-chain or like cross-border like transaction like seamlessly.
Yeah, you mentioned cross-chain with ZetaChain, right? So that's one of the big things we can do. But in my head, cross-chain is, you know, you're moving something one place to another. It's almost a verb, right? Whereas in Omnichain, I kind of view it as the user, and to a lesser extent the dev, they don't need to know what chain they're on. It's just kind of, they use their app, they can move things across. They don't have to worry about if it's cross-chain, multi-chain. It's just kind of, it's the blockchain. They don't have to worry about all the behind-the-scenes details, which I quite like.
Cool. Yeah, so there's this whole burgeoning market of cross-chain and interop solutions, which we can get into. I think one thing that's interesting is that the Bitcoin, much of it lives on the centralized exchange, and much of the cross-chain value transfer is happening in centralized exchanges. And I wonder what that tells us about the current state of DeFi, multi-chain, and kind of where we are. Any thoughts on that? Anyone can jump in.
I'll start. I always have thoughts. So on that, I think it just kind of goes to show the user experience is so much different between DeFi and just centralized exchanges, where it's so much easier in a centralized exchange to get different tokens, different chains. You don't have to worry about confirmation times or any of those extra bits. And I think that's a lot of what the work we need to do is how do we make the user experience in the DeFi world the same as the centralized exchange world, right? But with the additional benefits of no trusted parties, that kind of thing.
So I think there can be like 3 reasons like why the CX has more cross-chain, the transfer in assets. Maybe the first one is regulation, because there's only limited like means for like on and off ramp for the like crypto to fiat money, and the central exchange work as a like gateway for them. So that's like very super powerful like advantage they can have. And the second one is like obviously there's like I believe that there's more traders than like actual like Web3 users. That's why like all the lives in the coins lives in the exchanges. Then maybe the last one is like its convenience, because like its UI UX is a lot better than like DeFi it has right now. For example, like it's really easy to trade like between like BTC to any other mainnet like a ERC20 like Solana. And like if you can do that like in DeFi, you have to bridge it and wrap it, just to sell it in again. So it costs like a lot of gas. So those kind of like costs and kind of the speed bumps makes it like kind of discourage people to use DeFi. So maybe the challenge DeFi may have is like they're gonna be like more improve their like seamless kind of procedure and just doing all the cross-chain stuff. And I think the ZetaChain can be the solution, just to make it more smooth and the seamless like transaction cross-chain.
Yeah, I agree with two of you guys. I think the user experience is very important, and I think currently on DeFi we introduced too many kind of barriers. But I think ZetaChain will be a very good solution for all of these.
Very kind words on Zeta. Like objectively looking at the solutions that are out there in DeFi, there's a lot of investment and people building different interoperability solutions. We talked about wrapped tokens in the intro and some of the risks that come with that. It feels like users are stuck in a mindset where they're connecting to an app on like 8 different networks. And what are some of the challenges with the current state of interoperability from your perspective?
Yeah, so first I think if I wanted to really go cross-chain from EVM to the other ecosystem, I have to really have multiple kind of wallets, and then I can't even have a track of all these wallets. I have to install of them, and even in the same ecosystem, they have different wallets. And also, as a DEX, we were more interested in the assets on the specific chains, and because of this liquidity fragmentations, we see on specific ecosystems there are multiple of USDT, USDC issued by different bridges, different centralized exchange, and different projects, and that's kind of very difficult. They don't have really standards. So if you want to do some Omnichain or cross-chain trading, have to figure out and mapping, let the user know which specific assets they really wanted to trade or bridge.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Eric says. So like even for me, like I've been here for like several of the last 5 years, and I'm still like confused with the like whether I have to use like ETH or ETH, WBTC or BTC. So I totally agree with that. So it's gotta be like improved. Like if you wanna gonna people just make it really use it. And I think the another like obvious problem of the current state of DeFi or cross-chain is like it's like the vulnerable the custody issues. So like as all the like large amount of tokens like locked in the original chain, like it can be a great target for like attackers, and we have already experienced a lot of like the great target of the hacking attack. And so I think like the ZetaChain's like kind of messaging protocol may kind of be a better option to just like to using a safe and convenient way of using BTC utilization.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned security there, because that's always dear to my heart. But I think the current experience, we have to choose all these different tools, and it's very fragmented. Developers have to make sure they understand every different tool and the security implications of each one, and they're not necessarily security experts. And if you change to another tool, how does that impact the user down the road? And so I think it's very confusing for everyone in the whole stack, from the user to the developer. And so I think, yeah, moving towards a more simplified Omnichain system with more understandable security risks, I think is a much better move.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear we need a better interoperability standard. Curious how each of you is approaching it in your respective projects. Maybe we could start from the investor point of view at Vista Labs. Like, how do you look at the landscape of multi-chain interop solutions out there and talk about maybe a bit about your analysis and perspective.
Maybe so. Like, there's a lot of like trial attempts to just kind of solve this problem, and I think like one of the challenges like the ZetaChain or other like cross-chain solution like faces is like they gotta improve their like UI UX for sure. But I don't think this kind of difficult like task to solve because like there's like account abstraction, chain abstraction, like technicals came in, so it's not very hard to handle like different type of address like all the like global multi-chains. But like the problem is like those techniques or like UI UX not really solving the liquidity problem. So basically, once you just transfer your asset or just swap your asset to the other mainnet, like usually create the new pair, and mostly like not every like pair or cross-chain swap like support enough like liquidity for the seamless transaction. So maybe it's better to have a kind of liquidity layer in the middle to support kind of all the cross transactions. It's like it can be just working as a kind of seamless transaction we can experience from the like central exchange.
So yeah, how we're building it from the ZetaChain side, right? So it's, as we've talked about a little bit before, trying to abstract it for the developer, making it as simple as possible for them, giving them tools they're already familiar with. So that's why we're EVM compatible, using standard ERC20 to abstract away the cross-chain elements and making it so they don't have to worry about all that stuff. And then, supporting other projects that are coming in with this Omnichain mindset, right? How do we get more wallet providers to think about this stuff from a Omnichain perspective? How do we get dApp developers versus the multi-chain world?
Yeah, and a follow-up on that, like, there are a lot of blockchains out there. Why approach it as an L1?
Why build ZetaChain as an L1?
Yeah, like you have more control over the ecosystem and partners. What was some of the thinking behind that?
Yeah, trying to be chain agnostic, right? We want to connect to anything. Right now, that's EVM chains and Bitcoin, but we can expand past that. If you're not an independent L1, you're going to be dependent on whatever if you're an L2 going down to something else, you're going to be kind of stuck there. So to be truly future-proof and truly chain agnostic, we have to kind of build our own and be standalone because we can't be beholden to another chain and claim that we are chain agnostic.
Cool. And Eric, the question is how each of the panelists is approaching multi-chain with their respective projects. So at DODO, what's happening?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple levels of these multi-chain or omni-chain. So the first level is like for DODO as a protocol to deploy on different chains, but they don't have any interaction between them. And then we start to think about, okay, what if a user can actually interact with one chain but do something on the other chains? That's at the second level. And the third level, we trying to think about, okay, can we facilitate the cross-chain trading for all the for all the protocols stacks. So DODO is also a cross-chain aggregator. So we're trying to see whether we can do that. And finally, I think it's a huge, difficult challenge because we've deployed our code on EVMs, and it's very difficult, to develop another thing for, say, Solana or other ecosystem, and we don't even have a chance to do Bitcoin. But now we're thinking probably should consider ZetaChain as a solution to do these. Yeah. So this is kind of a stage. So we're currently thinking about going to all the Omni chains. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I think that covers kind of the thesis behind multi-chain and its importance. I want to get into Bitcoin, which is the topic of this panel, specifically Bitcoin in DeFi. There are some unique technical challenges with Bitcoin. It's non-smart contract capable, so you can't build directly on it. Maybe you could talk about some of the challenges of bringing Bitcoin into DeFi and why that's even important. Anyone can jump in.
I guess I'll go ahead. So I think like the challenges, as you mentioned, right, with Bitcoin is Bitcoin was not designed to do all the fun and interesting things that we're currently doing in DeFi, right? And so it's like trying to build a house out of dollar bills instead of trading those dollar bills for wood to build your house, right? Like there's some things it just can't do by itself. And so a lot of what we're building in DeFi is how do we kind of adapt this and build tools that help access that capital and liquidity and bring those users into DeFi. But yeah, like I said, the biggest challenge is it wasn't designed for it, and so we're sort of bolting on in some places to make it work the way we want it to.
So like the Bitcoin is the non-smart contract based and it's like just ledger basically. So even though there's like after Taproot upgrade, like there's some functionality that comes in, but like it's still a ledger. Other than that, it's not for kind of smart contract. So there's a lot of like attempts to just bring the BTC asset to the other mainnet, like wrapping it into the WBTC. But the problem is like you can't just use it as a collateral for the lending protocol, and you just use a lot of like DeFi protocol. But like the problem is you can't really use it in the cross-chain environment. So if you want to move that WBTC minted in the ERC20, you can really send it to Solana or other like mainnet like Avalanche. But like if you use ZetaChain, maybe you can use freely just transfer around on like all over the mainnet. I think that's the key crucial like element to just make it more usable in the like Web3 world, DeFi.
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges also is like Bitcoin people tend to be pretty maximalist and they want the transactions to happen on the Bitcoin network. And so they're not maybe so trusting of some of the great stuff happening in DeFi. It's also a chicken and egg thing, like do we really have apps in DeFi that can access Bitcoin today? And I don't think that's the case yet. Any thoughts on how you break into the Bitcoin communities and win them over, and how to build solutions that they trust?
So it's like the Bitcoin is like P2P electronic cash system, and we shouldn't forget that like Bitcoin is for like so if you wanna trade Bitcoin, it's gonna be on chain. It's gonna be kind of core value may have. So we shouldn't forget that like why it's the Bitcoin like birth and like why it's born. But like that's the ground we stand on right now. But like we gotta just think about like how it's gonna be if the like mine is over at the time in the far future, and like we gotta need some a lot of like use cases for Bitcoin other than on chain, just creating more fees for that, just like stabilizing the network. So I think like just utilizing Bitcoin in the Web3 space may just be can be an option to solution for the time.
Any other thoughts on the cultural dynamic of Bitcoin and DeFi?
Yeah, the one thing I think you both touched on was like the idea of trust. And Bitcoin's been around for, like 20 years now or something like that. Like no one trusted it at the beginning, right? It was like weird, hacker money. And then over time, trust has been built in it. So I think a big part of bringing people into the ecosystem is playing the long game, right? Like no one's gonna get up tomorrow and be like, oh, I'm all in, right? If they've always been just on Bitcoin. But it's, like I said, building good use cases, gets people interested, like, all right, I'll try this out a little bit, right? And kind of year over year, more people who are, Bitcoin maxis will see these crypto solutions that stand and have been, in place for years and years over time, and that'll grow trust and that'll help bring people in. That's what I think is going to happen.
Cool. And there's already a lot of innovation happening on Bitcoin infrastructure and apps, like the ordinals inscriptions trend, L2 EVMs, app-specific blockchains like Thorchain. Maybe help the audience make sense of all of the innovation that's happening, and what's happening in the landscape.
Yeah.
I'll say the VC perspective on that might be interesting.
So like I don't know, actually like I'm more like a Bitcoin lover than like just Web3. So I'm really interested in those kind of new trials or attempts and challenges in the Bitcoin system. For example, like BRC20 and like ordinals like an NFT, and there are even some EVM chain like a layer 2 chain using the BTC as a gas. So like some people think like which one is gonna be like prevail or which gonna be just gone so in anytime soon. And then I believe that like maybe the ordinals NFT, I'm really fascinated by those concepts because I really fascinated by its eternity. So the NFT exists like as long as the chain like exists. So I think that kind of absoluteness like never be something ignored. So I want to see that trend, but the thing is like I'm not really sure about like EVM channel 2 using the BTC as a gas because like I'm not sure like BTC is the suitable like asset to be used as a gas or other specific utilities. So like, but I will just want to see the trend like how it goes and unfolds.
So I've seen a lot of activities on the ordinals, BTC, NFTs. I mean, like I have a lot of friends that are trading NFTs. They also actually pouring their money into the BTC ecosystem. And then one thing is very obvious because BTC actually still has very, better higher liquidity on the value on the BTC chain. So I think there's clearly a chance. So this, I guess, it's a kind of innovation that I won't say it's liquidity fragmentation, but for NFT, it's actually much better to actually go to the other ecosystem to. Also, NFT is a EVM focus, but for BTC is definitely like a better chance to go in there. And I think in the future, the portion of the BTC NFT trading would be much higher. So that requires a Ethereum NFT trader to really have to build a kind of user experience for them. Right now, it's very difficult to buy ordinal, and it's the same. I mean, it's a double kind of barrier. It's difficult for EVM people to go into the ordinal, and also for the outside, the massive billion people who even have. I mean, the bitcoins, they still don't know how to buy an ordinal. So I think to facilitate kind of such a infrastructure is very significant.
And I like that you did mention that some things are better not on Bitcoin, right? And I think that's something I'm curious what's going to grow in the space, right? But it seems like at some level, we're taking the best things about other chains and trying to bring them into Bitcoin. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work super well. And then like with ZetaChain, one of the things we're trying to do is sort of the reverse of that, right? How do we bring the best of Bitcoin into all of our other chains? But I think it's going to be interesting to see how those both play out, right, over time.
Yeah, and you mentioned infrastructure, Eric, and I think one of the challenges of bringing Bitcoin into DeFi is that the tooling is different. So, like Bitcoin addresses are not EVM compatible, and I think the ZetaChain ecosystem is building tools to help ingest the memo and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, a lot of work to be done. If we talk about like specific applications, we're seing early apps to be able to swap native Bitcoin for other DeFi assets, lending. If we had direct access to Bitcoin and can compose whatever arbitrary logic and apps we wanted, what would the current landscape look like? What new apps would be made possible? What do you think the big Bitcoin apps will be?
So you're saying if Bitcoin was as programmable as EVM chains and stuff like that, what would it look like?
Yeah, if Bitcoin was like an ERC-20, without getting into like the technicalities, what kind of new apps would be possible in DeFi, consumer, social, Bitcoin NFTs? Like, what's the deal with that in the future?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm not super imaginative, so I have a hard time thinking more than like what we already have, but just everything bigger, right? But I do think making it accessible to developers in that way will allow people who are much more imaginative than me to come up with new and novel ways to deal with it, right? And I think part of that, like the simple one is, being able to buy your NFT with Bitcoin, sending transactions in, and making something happen on a different chain. But yeah, that's kind of where I see it. Similar to what we have, just bigger. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
I think like the roadmap for Bitcoin is already prepared because we already seen that like all the Web3 kind of new challenges over like using the P2E or DeFi. And but like Bitcoin just had this NFT and just had its like DeFi functionality. So I think they just follow the suit of the Web3 already been done. So it's like time to make a swap. Instead of maybe using the P2E or make a using social utilize the BTC for the kind of as a points or as a reward.
Anything on Bitcoin apps from your perspective, Eric? New use cases where you think the market will find traction?
Yeah, I think still on the thesis of like massive adoption. So if everybody can tap into the Bitcoin and then there's some Bitcoins apps, not even DeFi apps, which they can use on a daily basis. And then user doesn't seem to have like a onboarding. They don't have any like a sort of a barrier to enter, and it didn't kind of a seamless solution that will be very interesting to see. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. We'll wrap up with a couple questions just looking into the future with Bitcoin adoption. So like the ETF approvals have been successful. The Bitcoin price is up. Do we think these users start to onboard into crypto and start to use some of these new Bitcoin apps? Like, what do you think the ETF impact is on? Because people associate crypto with Bitcoin, and they don't know about all the DeFi stuff. So, do you see that as kind of the entry point?
Like actually, I think like there's no direct influence from Bitcoin ETF to DeFi landscape because like the people who invest in the Bitcoin ETF is investing in Bitcoin, nothing else. So, but I believe there should be an indirect like huge impact on DeFi landscape because like the existing Bitcoin holders like creating value right now, like they can make a profit. So they may want to realize those profit into DeFi kind of products. So in that way. So like one of the key kind of challenge we have is like not just ETF, like we need to, allure people from CEX to the DEX or DeFi landscape, and maybe like once the Bitcoin ETF can elevate the value they have, maybe like they want to just explore more in the DeFi landscape. So in that way, like ultimately just be really positive, but like not sure about the direct solution, just like institutions coming to DeFi right after the Bitcoin ETF. But I think it's kind of far to go for like KYC or AML measures still left.
I think similarly, I don't think it's going to be like we're going to see this huge influx of people, but I do think it increases trust and it makes it more of a living room conversation or kitchen table conversation where more people, it's more acceptable. And in my head, it makes people trust it more. Right? A lot of people who are not in the crypto game, they don't understand cryptography. They don't know the ins and outs of how it works. But if you can go and say, well, with Bitcoin, all these big trusted entities are doing it. For some people, that's enough. They're like, cool, the big guys do it. I believe in Bitcoin. The next step from that is, well, these other chains have similar cryptography methods. They use similar technology behind the scenes. They're now willing to entertain that, whereas before it was just kind of, it's just a weird computer program. What about hackers, right? What about, bugs and all that? But Bitcoin's proven that's not a real long-term concern. And so I think that trust from the institutions will come down through, individuals and help us out overall.
Yeah, and good point to think about that people really don't care about how things work under the hood necessarily. Like the internet, we use different email clients. We log into the same website on different web browsers, and ultimately, this is where we want to get to in crypto and what we mean by omnichain, multi-chain. Eric, any thoughts on the mass Bitcoin adoption and how that might funnel into the DeFi stuff?
Yeah, so I think still about like so I got the calls from friends. They haven't accounted me for 2 years. They say, okay, wow, how come Bitcoin's coming back? So I guess all these things is like, for the DeFi is very fundamental of the crypto things. While I'm really thinking about whether it can actually benefit the massive billions, they can tap into this infrastructure of DeFi. Well, sorry, but talk about like the ETF. I really think that the retail players will come eventually, but it's more like for these to set up a way and confidence for the institutional players into the systems. And also, I guess it's more about having Ethereum approved, ETF approved, is more like a change of opinion of the global governments towards this new kind of assets. And once these governments have the assets, and obviously the retail user would come in for sure. Yeah.
Cool. We'll wrap up with kind of a fun philosophical question, which is that if you think about freedom of money and the principles that were laid out in the Satoshi white paper, what do you think he would think about the current state of Bitcoin today and the future?
Me? I think Satoshi is a kind of prophet, so I think he already seen this already. So I don't think like no one really had to like angry about like why is a Bitcoin used like this or not. So and like most of it is permissionless. So it's just like gold. Like even if gold is kind of beautiful, but like you cannot tell someone like what to do with gold, like other than decoration. We can just use it as a collateral with the bank, whatever. So I think it's the same as Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I think the permissionless part is the big part of it, right? He put it out there in the world, said, here you all go, do with it what you want. The fact it's still in use, it's so popular, more than 20 people in one forum understand what it is. I think that would be success from that perspective.
Any thoughts on, are we living out the values that were laid out in the Bitcoin paper? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to imagine, but I think the core principle of his thesis hasn't changed. It's still like a decentralized. I think that's what he's looking at right now. But I'm not sure. But he never envisioned any sort of Omnichain things. But this will be kind of a new narrative, I think, for the other ecosystem to tap into the Bitcoins. I think, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks each of you for participating. Thank you for listening. And let's give a round of applause for the panelists. And that's the session. Thanks.
Thanks.